Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome to an instant reaction video, live video at that. Myself and Anwar Richardson, Alex Dunlap. Sorry, there. That was like muscle memory kicking in. It is the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. Thanks to all of you joining in. Jump into the comments. Alex and I are going to react to Texas head coach Steve Sarkisian holding his Big 12 Media Days session at the podium. There will be a lot more of Steve Sarkisian throughout the day as he does off the podium stuff. But Alex, I'll give you the first shot at this. If all the people jumping into the chat or watching this video 7 hours from now want to know the thing that stood out to you the absolute most, the single biggest headline from what he talked about on the podium today, for you, it was what?
Well, Ketch, I will say, you said before this thing we're going to get through it in 20 minutes. I'm not sure. I got a bunch of notes written down. I think that there are a bunch of things to hit on. But, dude, I mean, to me, it's like, I think that the most important one, the one that I have just underlined, was when when Sark said, I don't think it will take as long as it did last fall to name his starting quarterback. What that means? Okay, so I don't know. Is that what you thought too? Like,
my single biggest note.
Yeah.
It indicates to me that Steve Sarkisian knows who his quarterback is now, because if there was any doubt whatsoever, really, I think
you want to give yourself leeway, right? You want to
give yourself as much runway to land the jet as possible. And he basically said, "No worry, fellas, just give me like 40 yards. I'll land this jet full of people like going 500 miles an hour. I got this."
Yeah, it just goes it goes against coaching soundbite 101, right? Don't give the fans and the media, don't give them the red meat, man. Don't take the bait. Like, it's just like you said, Ketch. If there really were a lot of doubt in his mind, or really any doubt in his mind, that there was one of these guys that was set to be the starting quarterback, I mean, of course you're going to say, look, we're going to see how it plays out. So we have all fall. We don't start doing this all for the first game until, the last week of August. We got a lot of time here, guys. We haven't been able to see these guys much. As you know, as coaches, we don't get to be around them as much outside of the strength and conditioning stuff. There's a million things he could have said just to keep himself from painting himself in a corner. He's saying he doesn't think it's going to take as long. I think it's absolutely wild.
Alex,
look who's joining.
Yeah, Anwar Richardson. By the way, other than the dude with the blue shirt with like the flowers and the gold chain,
oh yeah,
Anwar is easily the second best dressed. When he stood up to ask his question, and he was on national television. My man looked like an NFL Hall of Fame voter. Like, he did not wear his Tuesday street clothes to Big 12 Media Days, and I'm proud of him.
Well, first of all, appreciate you, but you have to go, first of all, that I am the best dressed. And here's the reason why. Look at the collar. Can you see it?
Oh, look at the cufflinks. Look at this.
I don't know. That dude.
Look at that.
No.
Is it personalized?
Personalized
cuffs. Nice.
And then, I'm sorry.
Onward, I was being facetious.
Oh, wait.
He wants to show it all off.
He ain't done.
Socks. I've got the socks.
Right now, all we're getting is a crotch. Okay.
I got the socks that are embroidered also. The socks are embroidered also. So I got embroidered.
That you don't know is that you're just tall enough that basically for about 5 seconds, it was just a really good Anwar crotch shot. Hello, everybody out there on YouTube.
Speaking of...
Brent Venables would have been proud if that's the case.
Talking about best dress, man. I'd never in my life seen Barry Trammell. I've been reading his stuff since I was back in college. It seems like I didn't know he looked like one of the Beach Boys or something. Did you see his? He has the long hair. He's got the kind of the laid back dress. I didn't know he was.
It looks like kind of Oklahoma rider. What did it? A parrot head.
Like a Jimmy Buffett fan. Something.
My man stays on Kokomo no matter what time of the year it is. Anwar. So Alex and I, we just started, and I asked Alex your single biggest number one takeaway from what was said on the podium today. Alex and I were on the exact same page. I'm curious if you agree with us. So the floor is yours. The thing that stood out the most if someone hadn't seen this.
For me, I don't know what you guys said. For me, Catch was him saying that it's not going to take him as long to make a quarterback decision as it did last year. Is that what you
It's
as well?
unanimous.
Yeah.
Completely unsolicited from one another. Yeah.
Yeah. When he's like, yeah, it won't take as long. I'm like, well, first of all, it only took you one training camp practice session. So they had one scrimmage, and then he was ready to go with his guys. So it's almost like he's saying, like, because we have to work with these guys in the summer, it almost like the setup catches that he'll know who he's going to have in here. Start a training camp. Like, we might go into, Alex, that first session, and he may just be getting all the reps at that point. And we may just be like, say, oh, okay, they've already been made. Because essentially, what is he elevating it or so, Catch, from, when training camp starts to that first scrimmage? So it's almost saying if it's not going to take as long that we're going to start training.
Yeah, sometimes it goes a little bit. That first scrimmage isn't after the first week, though, right? The first scrimmage, they have like a Tuesday. Yeah. It's like a Thursday or something. Then they have the weekend to go through. Then they have a Tuesday. Then they have a Thursday. Then they have a scrimmage, or something along those lines. So it's not always. Sometimes it's like a week and a half, but I mean, it's a pretty short time frame. We're talking maybe 4 practices and then a scrimmage, 3 to 4 practices.
And Anwar, the thing that I said to Alex was, and it was what we were talking about right when you jumped in, was that he didn't have to say that. I mean, for him to say that he thinks the decision is going to come earlier this year than last year is an indication, from my perspective, that he knows who his quarterback already is. One of the things mentioned during the press conference, he really hit on the fact of how important it's been that the coaches have been involved this summer in player workouts, which is different than any year that I've ever covered college football. So, it stands to reason that they've got a better finger on the pulse than normal. By the way, it seems like, just FYI, if we're having any issues whatsoever, my producer is letting me know that Restream is having some issues. I know that Anwar's been a little hit and miss. Alex, I don't know if you've noticed anything, but that we've had some issues with the chat as well. I think that's probably our biggest issue. I think actually what we have going on right now is the chat is down for us in Restream. So don't send any super chat questions because we can't see them. And Anwar is hit and go from a connection standpoint, although he seems real good right now. Anwar, we both felt like he could have had as much runway as possible in answering that question and said, we'll announce it when we announce it. He put himself in a position where I feel like pretty early in camp, he'll be made on the first day, he'll be asked about the comment made today. Coaches typically don't say things that they don't have to say on purpose. So he wanted to say that. He wanted to get that out there. And I wouldn't be surprised if, as you mentioned from your very first comment, maybe it's the first day. Maybe it's just a matter of on the first day, Quinn Ewers has taken all of the first team reps and there's nothing to talk about. It is the headline. All 3 of us watched the exact same thing, didn't talk to each other in advance with the answers. And yeah, we all agree that's the big headline for me from today coming out of the podium.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the things I was talking about. I can see that there are people in the chat, though, Catch. So there are people there who are commenting right now. It's not showing up on our end, but there's 195 people in the chat, and there's a bunch of folks who are commenting right now live. So
we just can't put them up on the screen.
Yeah, but there's something on our admin end. But yes, to me, it speaks to Catch. It looks like I'm having connectivity issues. It looks like his world is kind of full, is crappy. So you know what? I'm not gonna on the show. Catch, I will join you tonight. We'll go live.
Sounds good.
We'll talk a little bit more. Okay.
Sounds good. Get back to work. Thank you. I was going to have to tell Anwar to do that, and then he recognized it himself, which is, it's always good when you realize that you're the drunk guy in the room and you're the guy kind of acting up.
Anwar's experience with that, right? I guess I do too.
It's like, oh, I should leave before you're told I should leave.
Yeah.
All right. So, Alex, what's headline number 2 for you? I've got several written down. What's number 2 for you?
It's just another thing. Just another thing that I thought was interesting is, Sarkisian saying he did a bad job last year with not making a great connection with the team. Just saying like, I did a bad job. I didn't make a great connection with the team. I didn't put a lot of focus and energy on that. And what he said was, I've had this conversation with the local guys. Then I thought to myself, I'm like, dude, I have to write this damn column that, whatever about the instant reactions column. But like, I have to listen to every word this guy says in every press conference all year long. Of course, it's my job to also, watch the press conferences back where they have availabilities with him on the, Wednesdays or whatever during the season. I have never heard him saying that. I've never heard him bring that up with the media before. I've never heard him. I mean, have you ever heard him bring that up? He says he's talked about it in the past. I don't ever remember him saying that he just, quote, just not making a great connection. I've never heard this.
He said he got the leadership wrong.
He identified the wrong leaders and stuff. And look, this isn't a dog on Sarkisian. I'm just talking about what he said. I found it interesting.
It was. Alex, we're 2 for 2. I 100% were on the same page. I always appreciate honesty and vulnerability and allowing us to come behind the curtain as much as possible. I often point out coaches rarely take responsibility for things that go wrong. And for Sark to say that in year 2, for him, the biggest difference is that he just didn't think he didn't think he did a good job of developing the team bond. He didn't think he recognized the right leadership. He talked about, but I appreciated the example he gave when he talked about being around his players and that too often they're on Instagram and they're not communicating to each other and they can be side by side, but it can be silent in the room, and that he's made a real point of trying to get these guys to connect with each other on a level that they're not face deep into their phones when they're together. And he used the example of, like, just today, the guys that are representing the university at the Big 12 Media Day, all he could hear in the plane, he could hear in the ride over, those guys together talking to each other, engaging with each other, and using that as an example. It makes me wonder why he was so confident last year. Like, I've got a million side questions for it, but I thought it's the kind of answer you don't get from 9 out of 10 coaches. It doesn't change. Alex said he went 5-7 last year, but I absolutely appreciate an honest, real answer in terms of how did that happen. And he didn't throw anybody under the bus other than himself, other than, to say, I misread the room with a lot of stuff.
Well, and the one thing you can hand it to Sark, I mean, even as they were in the midst of that, 6-game losing streak last year and everything was going completely down the tubes. I mean, I remember just in my instant reactions to his press conferences that I would do, those posts get a ton of engagement. Catch. I mean, it. I think a lot of the reason is a lot of people think I'm like hating on the guy when I'm really not. I'm just giving my instant reactions to the things that he says. But the one thing I always thought I gave him credit for, and I always try to be really fair about, was like, dude, at least this guy is not Tom Herman, who's literally, he's peeing on your leg and he's telling you that it's raining. He's telling you that what you're seeing on the field is not what you're seeing. He's giving off this air that he's smart enough to understand what he's seeing, but you're kind of not. With Sarkisian, he says, like, look, the problem is we can't block, and when we can't block, when there's that kind of pressure on the quarterback, it leads to this, and you're just like, oh, all right, well, yeah. So he sees the same thing we're seeing. It's his job to fix it, but at least he's not lying to us about what the issue is. So I totally understand, man, I totally agree. It's nice to hear him being forthright about that,
Well,
about that kind of shortcoming.
Think about it like this, Alex. You can't ask your players to be accountable if you yourself can't be accountable. And the reality is there's like 20 reasons why 5 and 7 happened. Right? Some of it was bad luck, a little bit of good luck, and maybe they go 7 and 5.
Just imagine if Spencer Rattler was a little bit better in the Oklahoma game. If he didn't suck just that bad, and they didn't have to put homeboy in for him, and for the rest of the game, it would have stayed on that same deal. Texas beats Oklahoma, and who knows what kind of momentum they could have had after that.
Bad luck, inside linebacker play, a little bit more experience, better leadership. Like there's a million things that you could point on. I appreciated that he pointed at himself. He didn't have to, but that he did. If I'm a player in the locker room, and not all of them will watch this, but the ones that do, let me put it to you like this. Had he called out some dudes, they'd have heard about it. And instead, he focused on himself in a way that answer ends up being a non-issue, I think, in his locker room. But if they were watching, I would appreciate, and it would endear me to my coach, because they know they'll think to themselves, guys that let that team down. And instead he pointed at himself. And I think at that point, the players would probably say, I don't think that's fair. But that he said it is a real credit to him. Real quick, again, give us some likes. Even though the chat for us isn't working and we're not able to do any of that, we do love your likes. We do love your subscriptions. I saw a couple of super chats come in. Eric, we owe you one. And gosh, I've already forgotten. Oh, Joel, thank you. He gave us $20 and just said, thank you for the content. Thank you for the super chat. We owe you one. Please, guys, don't send any more super chats. We're having some issues on our side with regards to it showing up in the platform that we're recording on, doing the show from. It froze on us. So we can't pull the questions up on the screen, and we don't want you to be giving away money for the sake of – we don't need your charity. So we'd love to be able to recognize you, answer your questions. Fellas, we owe you. All right, Alex, we're 2 for 2. I think I've got one more thing. And then what I might do after number 3 for both of us is let you rattle off the rest of your notes. However, especially since we can't go to the chat right now, and I should remind everybody, Anwar mentioned we will be going live tonight with the modcast. Alex won't be able to be in the modcast today, and neither will Jason. But there will be a live modcast. I believe Travis Gailey is going to join us, as well as Cole Patterson. So we'll have a full room. I think we're aiming for a 7 o'clock start time. That is a little bit fluid. Okay, Alex, number 3 thing behind – he likely knows who his starting quarterback is, and he blamed himself for much of last season's ills. The number 3 headline for you is what?
He said, I can't wait to play him, when he was talking about Nick Saban.
Really?
I can't wait to play him. It's like, come on, of course you can. Of course. I can't believe it. Coach comes out and says that, man. It's like he gave all the respect he could to Saban, all the respect he could to Miss Terry. He basically said, he did say, I would not be sitting here today if it were not for Nick Saban's contributions to my career, but I can't wait to play him.
Well, let's just going into that game. That game, from a program standpoint, it's pretty big, and not from a can they win it standpoint. I think it's about the quickest way to put 5 and 7 behind you is to be competitive in that game. I mean, if they win it, I don't have to speak to how big it would be. But if it's a fourth quarter game, then if you're a Texas fan or you're someone following the program or even just someone watching college football in general, 5 and 7 gets forgotten really quickly. And what's happening in the here and now becomes the main focus in a way that if it doesn't happen, you probably don't get that kind of credibility build unless you beat Oklahoma. And you know what I mean? It's the second game of the season, and it's a chance to make last year kind of irrelevant. So I know why they would want to play that game, but boy, you better be ready, because if you don't perform well in that game, everybody will remember 5 and 7. And then the conversations that take place about the program is, when do you get good? Whereas in week 2, you can announce that you're really good with a really good performance.
Hey, do you know another one I maybe should have mentioned before that one? Do you want to say one of yours? Because here, can I just ask you this question? Can you name because he talked about certain groups of players. He talked about the group that he had there with him. I believe in that whole press conference, he only named one player by name on the entire team.
That's a great point.
No. Did he say Bijan's name?
I watched an interview with him with Matt Berry on ESPN, and maybe he didn't mention Bijan.
Do you know who he did mention?
Who?
You can't think of it? Whenever he was talking about when they brought in the offensive line and they brought in the 15 to the defensive line?
I don't.
Brennan Thompson.
That's right. You know what? I didn't hear that comment. I saw it on Twitter though. He said they had that speed on the outside.
He just out of the stone blue. He goes and drops out of anybody Brennan Thompson's name about how there's the SEC stuff, which was something else that I think was kind of interesting. A couple little nuances around that, but when he's talking about it, he's saying, we've already been building for the SEC anyway. Like I came from the SEC. I wanted to build the program in sort of that image, right? And so we did this stuff. We brought in the big physical offensive lines. We brought this all this stuff. He goes, and if you look at what Brennan Thompson out of where's he from? Spearman. He said where he's from. He said Brennan Thompson out of Spearman. You bring him in 10-2 in the 100-meter dash. Like that's the kind of like that's SEC speed and stuff. I just didn't hear him name drop a single other player. I thought it was interesting, man. It could be telling about maybe, the way that they're sort of viewing him coming into the season. That's been a suspicion and a hunch catch that you and I have both had ever since we first put on film with a guy, after he committed. You just said, whoa, this could be a guy that's going to be hard to keep off the field, pretty early.
Yeah, it's a great point, Alex. Such a great point that I didn't catch it in real time, that A, he wasn't name dropping anybody else, and B, that Thompson specifically got mentioned. I actually think it was weird. ESPN Plus's coverage of the press conference was behind in real time. So I was seeing comments on Twitter before I heard stuff and then I just got distracted, I think, in that answer because I just didn't remember hearing it. I have a number 3 that you haven't mentioned yet, but I do think that's a great point. It will make, if they give us access on day 1, day 2, like they typically do the first couple of days, that first, even 15, 20 minutes, I'm curious where Brennan Thompson is lined up.
Yeah.
Because they're going to want to try to get that guy on the field, but they're not, they're deep at receiver. I think of him as a slot guy, and, they love Jordan Whittington. And he's name dropped Jordan Whittington a million times previous to today in press conferences. So, they do have a lot of wide receiver talent that they're working with this year, an upgrade from a year ago. Where Thompson fits in will be really interesting because that guy doesn't have to catch the ball to change the way defenses have to defend you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you think he'll surely be in the slot. I mean, I think
That's why I said
he could be stretch flanker too. But I mean, then you're lining up behind Worthy all the time. So you got to figure they're probably trying to. Here's the thing. During the spring, we saw them go to this kind of pseudo 4 wide receiver set and stuff where they put Jaleel Billingsley. They kind of flexed him out as sort of like a second slot wide receiver with those twin slots. You think maybe that won't all be Billingsley in the fall. Maybe they'll have some packages there where they can get Brennan Thompson, Jay Witt, and that's assuming that Jay Witt stays healthy. I mean,
that's why I've said the thing that Whittington probably, because the other thing is Worthy started out as an outside receiver, an inside receiver that they moved outside because they were like, well, we just got to get this guy on the ball on the field, and we need Whittington on the field. So they went into last year in the summer on the first day of practice, essentially. They were like, we're not going to bury our best receiver or our second best receiver behind our best receiver just because we have a position on him. So if Whittington ever gets hurt, they've got a couple of guys that they can move inside, including Worthy, because Worthy can just do anything he wants to. So, if Thompson takes off in such a way, I wonder what the three receivers are at that point. Who ends up being the odd man out? Because I do think when they go to this, the scheme you're talking about, I do think they'll have a tight end on the field a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, you know how they use tight ends.
Yes.
So it's like if they have guys justify having a tight end on the field, even when they want to go 4 wide, just by getting a dude like Billingsley. And hey, that's not to say that Billingsley can't go out and do something, but man, Brennan Thompson's just a different kind of cat. The way that he could change the game.
There's nobody else in the program with 10-2 speed.
Yep.
And the type of major college football prospects last year that had that kind of speed, I mean, you could probably count on 2 or 3 fingers. It is the reason why I thought you almost certainly had to rank him as a 5-star, because his elite tool is elite of the elite. Like if Brennan Thompson's any good, he goes to the combine. We know he's going to run incredibly well. And he's probably a guy that ends up in 3 or 4 years getting drafted really highly because his skill set is so just different than everybody else. I mean, that translates in terms of raw, true speed faster than mere mortals. And so, he is, there's a reason why he name dropped him today. Okay. My number 3 point, I thought, was the Gary Patterson question.
Oh, well, then, so that was, yeah.
Because if you missed it, guys, he was asked, and now I'm getting my interviews mixed up because I've seen him on TV a couple of times, but I'm pretty sure it was a TCU media guy that asked him about Patterson. And I thought Sark threw a lot of sweetness on the answer. I think he played to the guy that asking the question. He gave that guy an answer. Mm-hmm. What was really interesting to me is when he really started listing off what makes Patterson valuable on the staff.
Well, because Sarkisian has noticed him from afar in the same way that you have for years, Catch. The way that he can identify these players in recruiting, and not only identify them, but evaluate them for different positions. All kinds of stuff, all stuff that you've been saying. You've been doing the LSR for how the LSR just got an update on Orange Bloods. Everybody should go check it out. You've been doing that for how many years? And you've always said your check is to go check Gary P's offers just to make sure there's not anybody he's offered that you're leaving off that.
I feel like my rankings are naked right now because I don't have Gary Patterson's offer board to cheat off of. But I would go in a slightly different direction. He mentioned that he's a great soundboard for Kwiatkowski, and he's a great soundboard for the defense. And he said that before he said he's a great soundboard for me as a head coach. And he specifically mentioned that guy can help our defense. And, Gary Patterson's going to have a shadow over Kwiatkowski until that defense is good. That defense is good. Kwiatkowski can go to any steakhouse in Austin and eat for free, and Longhorn fans will walk up and buy him drinks. Until that happens, he can go into any steakhouse he wants, probably still get his meal paid for, but instead of the fans coming up and buying him drinks, they're staying at the bar and they're asking when he's going to be replaced by Gary Patterson. So,
yeah.
So Patterson, that he positioned him as, hey, that guy, Kwiatkowski has Patterson to work with. The defensive staff has Patterson to work with. Boy, I don't know that Texas has ever had an analyst. Matter of fact, I know they haven't. Where the head coach shows up and positions the analyst as the Consigliere
of the defense. He's like
exactly.
It's like he's getting paid like an analyst, but he's like the crime boss, dude. And he didn't only say that. He heaped praise on this dude. He talked about him, and I can even vouch for this because I didn't know Gary Patterson from Adam. Still don't really know him and stuff, but I'll tell you what, he's the first coach, analyst, anybody at the University of Texas who at a practice has walked up to me and introduced himself as if I didn't know damn well who this guy was. What other coaches do that? Like, what other coaches try and just ingratiate themselves to weird, random, wants to meet the random media dude who's here watching practice or who's here at pro day. You know what I mean?
Pigs are legendary. Don't kid yourself.
Well, I'm not sure.
He's run into Texas offensive line coaches on the recruiting trail, and they've said, you know what pisses me off? This damn guy at Orange Bloods is hey, you know what's the funny thing about that, Alex?
Yeah.
The first time I ever met Patterson was on the recruiting trails, and we were at Kilgore High School in 2004. And Patterson came up to me and was like, hey, I love your recruiting rankings and like, nice to meet you. And very similar to what you just described. And that was almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, wild, man. But I mean, Gary Patterson was one of the things I even had written down in quotation marks. You can see it right here. I even had it written down where it says sounding board. You see it right there, sounding board. It's like, I mean, it's a big deal. And it's all, dude, it's also, it got me thinking. It just got me because Sark said, I'm excited to be working with him over the course of the next 6 months. I don't know if that means anything about how long he thinks he's going to be here, whether this is just a 1-year deal or if, man, but if he does a good, I mean, it's be crazy catch. I don't want to veer way off course, but what if the defense is really good? It does, like, and Gary Patterson wants to fly off into the sunset to get a new job somewhere, right? Or there's the fan base and the alumni, and are people going to say like, well, wait, they were only good because they're Gary Patterson? Are they going to give Coach PK credit for the turnaround? I mean,
PK's making 1.7 mil this year.
But isn't that an interesting thing to think about? It's like, what if the defense is good? Like, who gets the credit?
I think PK has to get the credit.
Okay,
but this is uncharted territory.
I mean, man.
I don't know that anybody in college football has ever, like maybe this is hyperbole, but there aren't many programs that you can even hire a Gary Alabama maybe, but I've never heard Alabama in a position where anybody behind the scenes is teaching and
yes.
like you said, being in a position to be the overseer, if you will, you mentioned the mob type reference, he's essentially Tom Hagen, right?
Yeah.
And it's a unique situation. I don't know. I mean, maybe the best answer is it's never happened before. Who the hell could possibly guess how the credit will be doled out? And 6 months from now, if Patterson's in a position, let's say, I don't know, let's say Arkansas, I'm just random SEC school.
Okay.
Wants to hire him to be a defensive coordinator, and they're offering like $2 million a year. At that point, Sarkisian has to decide who's more valuable to me in my program. Is it Kwiatkowski or is it Patterson? And we wouldn't normally say something like that 6 months in advance, except it's such an unusual position that we're asking things like, hey, if the defense is really good, is the guy that's not on the field on game days the guy that we give all the credit? I don't know. We'll be talking about it though a lot, I think, over the course. It will be a day by day, week by week topic.
Sure.
For better or for worse.
Yeah. Hey man, I'm just glad that there's I'm glad that there's so many day by day, week by week topics for people to be talking about over on Orange Bloods, man. It keeps us in business, right?
That will definitely be one of them. Okay, so we'll start to wrap things up here. We've already gone a little bit longer than I thought I would, which is good. Like we're building, we've got over 400 people watching live right now, so the audience is building. Hit me with the rest of your notebook of things that jumped out.
Well, okay. So just mainly kind of during the course of this conversation, we've hit on a couple of things because I mentioned the stuff about, building for the SEC, all the stuff like that. But one of the things I thought was interesting was whenever he talked about we were building for the SEC, and I wrote down the quotes, regardless of playing this year in the Big 12. And then he corrected himself and he said, this year, maybe next year. Makes me wonder, he's just talking about regardless of playing this year in the Big 12. Then he kind of caught himself saying like, oh, well, wait, I don't want to give the impression that I know something about us, this being the last year in the Big 12. So he said, this year, maybe next year, just, I don't know if, what that means, but just interesting. And I think it also kind of makes sense. Like I said earlier, coming from a place like Alabama, seeing what he can do with the offense and with a football team that's sort of built that way, of course he's going to want to build that team in his image, regardless of what conference that you're playing in. And then the only other thing I wrote down, I thought this one was probably the least, the good one to end on, because it's definitely the least important. But I really cared about this because I got put in handcuffs and taken out of DKR one time over this very issue. He says that the fans need to.
I'm sorry.
He said that the fans need to make sure that they get there early and make sure that we're not sitting in our seats. We're standing up and we're not sitting in our seats. And I said, wait till the olds hear this one. Wait till the olds on the Lower West Side hear this one, because I'll tell you what, dude. I've been to too many games where you stand up in front of the old people. The old people all tell you to sit down. And I remember one time when I was in college, dude.
Oh, they do it with like disgusting tones too.
Oh, well, yeah, man. I mean, I was in college. I was drunk. I was probably acting a fool, of course. But I'm sitting around these blue hair olds kind of behind me in the Lower West Side grandstands. We're like, I'm getting up, trying to get fired up for the football game and stuff. And they keep saying, like, what are you doing? They're like, why did, they were complaining because it was somebody's season tickets that they had known for a while. And they're like, why did Mr. Jones sell his season tickets to these young drunkards? Like, you guys need to sit down. We can't see the damn, like, look at me. I have a cane. I can't stand up. I can't see you. Like, Sark needs to realize, man, these olds give him a bunch of money, man. He might not, he might say, look, if you're sitting above a certain section on the West Side, we need everybody standing. As far as the Lower West Side, where all the olds are, you could probably sit down, because we definitely need the cash from those guys to pay all this NIL.
And asterisks. He just should have said, hey, and if you are an affluent donation person, on the West Side in the shade, or not in the shade, whatever the case may be, you can sit down.
Yeah, exactly. So,
or maybe he says, if you own a box.
If you
sit in a luxury suite, you do whatever the hell you want to do. Otherwise, stand your ass up in the stadium. And I'm talking to you two olds. That'd be funny. Like, won't ever happen, but I'm sure he's thinking it. Yeah. Do you specifically remember? Did you actually get handcuffed out of a game?
Oh yeah, man, I did. I didn't get arrested. They
just handcuffed you.
Yeah, they handcuffed me and they took me out of there. They came and told me, the cops came and it was just UTPD in there, right?
Do you remember the game?
Yeah, the actual game? Oh, no.
Yeah.
No.
How long could you not remember that? You were that drunk?
Oh, yeah, but also I went to a ton of games when I was in college. I mean, I don't remember the exacts. I'm not like you, Ketchum. I don't have a photographic memory for like back in 2000. I couldn't tell you whether this was 2002 or 1999 or anything.
You can mention any home game from 95 through 2010, and that's about when I stopped going to the state. No, maybe like 2012, 2013. You can mention any game, home game, and I can tell you something about it from the experience.
God! Well, we need to play that game on the modcast one day when it's during the slow part of the season.
Just name a random game and ask me to name a memory.
Yeah, and you guys say I would just come at you and say, Iowa State 2009. You have to be like, oh, that was the year that. Like, that would make for awesome content, man. To try and what's that game? The game where they used to have to stump to somebody, the guy that knew all the trivia questions.
The guy on try and stump.
Yeah,
I know who you're talking.
It would stump the Schwab. Yeah, yes. it would be stump the catch, and it would be fantastic, dude. I would love that.
So let me tell you this. Like, I have these. Let me tell you the reason why. I think. For most of the first part of the 2000s, I was sitting with Brad Calhoun, formerly of Texas, rest in peace, from the message board. Mm-hmm. And Brad just created stories. I met Sean Adams at, a home game, and I don't think I can even remember that. There's always something happening, though, in our section. Usually because my man Brad just had a way of creating something incredibly memorable. I can remember being in the stands for the Colorado home game of 2001, right? So they lose to Colorado a couple of months later in the Big 12 championship game. I can remember them beating them like 35, 40. It was like 42-10 in the fourth quarter, and people were still bitching about Chris Sims.
Yeah.
Like just random things from fans have always stood out in my mind. I think I would have remembered. I once got hauled out of the Cotton Bowl in 2004 by the police.
What'd you
Kind
do?
of the same thing.
Standing up, little bit rowdy.
The guy
told me those blue drinks you used to drink.
the police officer from the Cotton Bowl told me that it was either me or like 15 OU fans, and so I was easier to like lead out of this issue. Some OU fan like got in an old's face on a cane and screamed at the guy in such a way that like the old guy and like his old wife nearly like fell down to the ground. And I was like, dude, you guys won. Like, enjoy the win, but don't be screaming at olds. And like a full-on brawl almost broke out after that.
Welcome to the Cotton Bowl, man. Welcome to the State Fair. Welcome to Texas.
SEC ain't taking that away.
No, man. No way.
Any final comments as we wrap things up? Last thoughts?
No, man. Just yeah, man. Happy to hop on and happy to see everybody in the chat, man. Sorry we couldn't see y'all's message today. It always makes it a lot more fun, but I'm sure we'll get that thing back up and working for the next broadcast. Yeah,
and we had one more. Michael, my payday, or I think was the name of the guy. I can't remember the handle. He did a Michael, my business was the name of the guy in the chat. Said, here is the season, quote, confidence is contagious, so is a lack of confidence, end quote. Michael, thanks for the donation. We really didn't want any super chats questions today or comments because we couldn't see them on our end and put them up on the screen. Thank you. We owe you one. Come hop in the modcast later tonight, and we owe you one. Anyway, give us some likes. Give us some subscriptions to the channel. We do live shows. It's turning into like 4 or 5 days a week. We're the biggest and best covering Texas athletics and have been for 20 plus years. Thanks for watching the Orange Bloods Texas Football YouTube channel. We'll see you tonight when we do the modcast. Alex will be busy being dad somewhere in Austin.
Lakeway.
But we've got an army of people coming tonight. Myself, Anwar, Travis, Cole. Sukamel's on vacation. You know what, real quick, Alex? Sukamel must be having either the best vacation of his life or the worst. But I got to think it's the best because he hasn't been in Slack and complaining about one aspect of the trip. Not one. And usually Sukamel's always got something wrong going on in life.
Maybe he didn't skip on his airlines this time. He's like, God damn, the Frontier or Spirit or whoever else. So I was like, well, of course it is, man. Get a better airline carrier. Of course you're gonna have these issues, dude. Maybe he just splurged and paid up for Delta or Southwest or something.
You know, it's gonna happen tomorrow because I think tomorrow's his return date.
Yeah.
So my guess is tomorrow we'll see him on Slack. And he'll have some axe to grind about either one of his kids, his wife, or the airlines.
Yeah.
Has to be.
Or any combination of the
Otherwise, like, I'm going to be really proud of his ability to stay the hell out of work environments.
Yeah, man.
You know, even you had to tweet out last week, like, man, the water parks are like, you know what I mean? Like, even you had to jump onto social media for a second for a quick little
breath of air.
Yeah, my money is like coming out of my wallet like, water that can't be turned off. And, you know, Sukamel's been completely off the grid this week. Well done, Jason Sukamel. I am not used to that from you. For myself, and yeah, exactly. Like I said, tomorrow may be awful. For myself, Alex, and Jason, who is not here to defend himself, but will surely hear about this at some point over the course of the next few days, because I'll bring it up whenever he does return. Like the channel, subscribe to it, ring the bell, get notifications, do all that stuff. Thanks for watching. You guys have a great rest of the day. Take care of each other. Later.